Welcome to Behind the Muscle podcast. Today's guest is an IFBB 212 Pro and 2022 Olympian. Today's guest is Bryan Balzano. Bryan, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, for sure, Bryan. So super excited to chop it up with you, man. Before we kind of get into the nitty gritty here, I've got a couple of questions I like to ask all of my guests just to kind of get the conversational ball rolling, so to speak. So the first question I have for you is, who are a few of your favorite bodybuilders of all time?
So pretty much main two, Jay Cutler and Lee Priest. Reason Jay Cutler, so before I ever got into bodybuilding, which for years, like I didn't know what it was. I just like to work out. And when you go to GNC and everywhere, you saw Jay Cutler's like picture. So like I always wanted to look like him. So I didn't really know what the IFBB was when I started to lift or bodybuilding itself, but I knew who Jay Cutler was and I wanted to look just like him. So he was a huge inspiration to me because that's what I wanted to look like. And then as I tried to transition more in the sport and understand what it was and become an actual bodybuilder, Lee Priest is probably my favorite physique of all time. I think head to toe, like I just think his body was perfect. So those are the reasons why those two are pretty much my all-time favorites, and they had the biggest impact on me.
Are there any guys that you have competed against, or any guys on the current IFBB circuit, and it can be any class, it doesn't matter, that you really kind of respect their physique or kind of look up to them as somebody who's like a peer of yours current day?
I gotta say, like, I never competed against him, but Flex Lewis, just because I knew where I stood when I got in the sport, this would be who I'm going to go to. And like, honestly, like a few years back, everyone's saying like open was getting too, like fluffy and big, but like 212 was holding their conditioning down. Like back when it was like Eduardo Correa took second, there was some nasty conditioning, and the 212s were always coming in, lean and hard, and the open was kind of not coming as dry. So like, I think for me, Flex Lewis, I think could have stood with open easily throughout his career. So he was probably the one that like had the most impact, or like, even though I never competed with, but like I respected the most because he honestly could have taken down, I think, any Olympian of our time today.
I agree. I really wish we could have seen him in the open Olympia at least one time before he retired. Like I really think at his peak, he could have done some serious damage. I mean, you agree, right?
Yeah, because even like when you look at like the symmetry, like a lot of people like, like forearm genetics and calf genetics, like they don't just match. Like people have big arms, big bodies, like their forearms are too small compared to their arm, their calves are too small compared to their legs. The Flex was like his calves match the leg, his forearms are 19 inches, which is like absurd. Like it rolled into the arm. So like when you look at the full picture, I mean, it just looked beautiful. It just flowed. And many people don't have that like overall body flow. So Flex could have, once again, when you look at the big picture and not just mass itself, I think he could have literally been the first ever 212 and open Mr. Olympia.
Agreed. All right. So tell us, Bryan, at what age did you start lifting weights? And then why did you start lifting weights at that age?
So senior year of high school, not exactly sure the age. That's long ago. So like maybe 17, 18. And it's kind of like that, meme. But I had my first breakup. I wanted her back, and I thought a body would get her back. So obviously that, didn't really work out, but something that stuck with me. So that's what pretty much got me to the gym. And then I ended up just falling in love with working out and just never stopped. So
very cool.
That's how I am.
Yeah. And we're going to kind of get more into the bodybuilding talk here in a minute. But before we do, why don't you tell us a little bit more, Bryan, about your backstory? Tell us a little bbit about where you grew up. What was your family life like? What sports did you play? What did you kind of want to be in terms of like, a career job after you graduated from high school? Talk about that a little bit, and then we'll transition from there.
So I grew up in Northeast Cleveland. I'm from Mayfield, if any out there know. So I graduated in 2007. I was like, so I graduated high school at 104 pounds. I was a very small kid, wasn't very popular because I know I didn't really do much of anything. Was kind of picked on a lot. So I didn't have many friends. And so lifting kind of helped like progress that. So when I had my first girlfriend and she split up me and I got into lifting, like people wanted to start becoming friends with me and all stuff. So like it kind of helped like give me an identity. Whereas before I was just kind of like walking around and like no one cared because I was like this tiny little like anorexic kid. So it kind of helped give me an identity, friendships. And then as going to college, just people started to like, you know, gravitate more towards me. So family wise, my parents got divorced at 2. So I don't really like kind of like know like a whole family. It just kind of went back and forth. Me and my dad kind of butted heads a lot. I wouldn't say that we really got along very well. But my mom, you know, she was always there. My family didn't really have a lot of money at all. So it's not like we can provide much. We just kind of did what we could. And that's pretty much like it. Like, you know, like I just don't really talk to my dad at all. But my mom's still very close in my life, and my half sister. So besides that, they're the only family I really have. And then I forgot the other questions.
Well, when you were like in high school, thinking post high school, what did you want to be, quote unquote, when you grew up, or what were you thinking about for a career when you were in high school? Because we all kind of have thoughts about that when we're younger, you know?
So I didn't really know what I want to do, but like, I was like, you're always told, got to go to college. I was very good at math. Like, I'm very good at numbers. I'm just kind of like, I'm very like concrete. Like, I don't like papers or writing papers here. Like, it's like, I like just like an A to B, like here's an answer, here's this, things that are very like as is. So math was just, it is like, there's one path to getting the answer. It was just easy. So from there, it's kind of like, I guess I was going to business, and I just went into business economics. Didn't want to go more because everyone wanted to go like business finance. But to me, I thought business economics was like kind of it's a similar route, but just like a little different. Maybe it'd stand out a little more going for a job interview. So that's pretty much my degree. I got business economics. Then right before I graduated, so I went to OU, Athens, Ohio. That was where I went to college at. Before I graduated, I got hired by Chase, and I've been a mortgage underwriter for now 11 years. And I've had the same job. It's just pretty much, for many out there who don't know what that is, when you go to buy a house, I'm pretty much the person who says yes or no to you getting that loan to purchase your house. So it's pretty much just like, I analyze documents, your finances, your credit report, and I make a credit decision based on if you are able enough to pay this loan back over the course of the 15, 10 or 30 years that you're applying for. So that was pretty much it. Like, I didn't really ever think about bodybuilding, but it was like, I had to go to college. I still like, is this the job that I ultimately like would have loved to have? I'm not sure, but it's kind of like the path. Like, I just know I was good at numbers, went into business, and this is where I ended up. And I don't hate my job. I've been doing it. It's like, for 11 years, and it allowed me, because like what I wanted was, I'm not salary based. So I still wanted to get my lifting in, my diet. Like, I was pretty much a bodybuilder without being one, but it gave me that, like, I got my paycheck, I got my source of income, but I work 8 to 5. I'm not salary, so I don't need to stay till 7 or 8. When 5 o'clock hits, I'm out that door, get to the gym. So I was able enough to have me do what I wanted to do outside of the real world, while still having like, real job of like a paycheck. And so it made me happy because it gave me the opportunity to do everything I wanted to do outside of work without having to sacrifice like, oh, I gotta work a weekend, I gotta, stay late today. It was like, nope, like I got my 8 hours in, I'm out. Now I'm gonna do what I love.
Perfect. Now I want to take a step back here. You said that when you graduated high school, you were 104 pounds.
Yep.
Wow. Okay. So why don't you talk to us then about going from 104 pounds to the point when you started competing in bodybuilding? Like unpack that story for us, please, Brian.
All right. So I started lifting, let's say like mid senior year. I started 104 pounds within before college started. So I went from 104 to like 130. And just from lifting and like, so from this moment on, this is kind of when like everyone was like, oh my God, you're taking steroids, blah, blah. Like, because it was like, who would have guessed I had those genetics? But like at that time, it was just my main two products was the BSN NO Explode and the Cell Mass. Was that it? Dude, I loved NO Explode. Man, I was a junkie on that stuff. And I just, like, I had good genetics. And then from that point on, around the sophomore year, just kind of like I went from 130 to 135. Then I finally hit like 150. And around 150 in my sophomore year of high school, that was when I started taking like some pro hormones. And all that was still out there. There was Spawn, Phenaflex. There was one by Havoc, I think was one. Yeah, it was, and so that helped me get to like 175. And then at that point, everyone was like, you know, oh my God, you're for sure using steroids. And then my junior year of high school was the year I first, you know, started taking the exogenous hormones. But it just kind of like progressed. It was like, but like early on, when all my friends were saying, like, and other coaches, like people in the industry at the time, which I didn't know, were trying to get me to compete. They're like, you know, this is when I understood that I had genetics, because like just from using like simple products and then the pro hormones here, like I was exploding each time I was doing something. And obviously someone coming from 104 pounds and that can naturally stay leaner, it looked a lot like, so me being 150, I looked 180. And so even like right now in the off season, like when people see me here, like, oh, you're 207, they're like, dude, you look like you're 250. So that's kind of how it just progressed. I just kind of like started taking like the GNC stuff. Then I found the pro hormones. And then from there, and then I progressed and it just went from 104 to 130 to 150. I remember 175. And then every time I remember kept thinking to myself, like, oh, if I just hit 175, I'll be good. Then I'll hit, you know, if I can just hit 200, I'll be good. I'm like, then if I can just hit 225, and then like you look at, you're like, man, it just never stops. You're like, but now it's like, all right, like all the food, the heaviest we got was like 230, 235, I think last year. And I'm like, I still would like to be bigger, but I'm just like the amount of force feed. I'm like, you know what? Like this is fine. I'd rather just refine the body and get harder and leaner at that 230 than try to get any bigger than that.
So now this was all, so you started lifting senior year of high school, and then this transition really took place in college, right?
Yeah, for that most part.
Okay, cool. Now, when did you, or how did you, first of all, how did you get into bodybuilding, or how did you kind of get exposed to bodybuilding? And then talk about your first competition, please.
All right, so I met someone in college named Jamin, who is how I got in touch with my coach. He was a bodybuilder. He was the one that like, cause like I went to OU, and I'm sure many of you out there who may know or may not know, it's like the #1 party school in the whole America. Like, so no one goes there to like lift. It was so like every Friday night, it'd be like me and 3 people, me, Jamin, and Chris, and everyone else just out getting drunk. So like we kind of all connected, and he was like a true competitor. And he was the one who kind of opened my mind to it and all stuff. But like in college, like I would listen to him, but I'm like, look, man, like I'm here to get a degree. Like I'm not trying to do this, but like he was always there. And then like obviously after I graduated and moved to Columbus, he reached out to me. I was like, hey man, like, you know, like now that you have your job and all your excuses are kind of done, like, why don't you do it now? You have an income. There's no reason for you to say no anymore. But so that's how bodybuilding came in. But then when I also came to Columbus, Mike Davies, when I started training at Metro Fitness Worthington, he was doing the same thing. He would like walk up, and all the other trainers were like, dude, like you have some serious genetics. Like you should probably like get on stage. And after a while, like I was very hesitant, but like after a while, they finally convinced me to do this upcoming show as my very first show in Columbus, which was the Mike Francois Classic in 2014. I think it was around like October, November is when I decided like, all right, I'll do this. It's in May, but I had to find a coach. So I reached out to Jamin and was like, hey man, like he was the only person I really trusted to give me guidance, because he was there from the beginning. He was just a very good guy. I was like, look, I think I'm gonna do my first show. I need a coach, because like I don't know how to do this on my own. And so he was like, let me get in touch with my coach, Justin, and see if he'll take you. And then we got together January 1st of 2014. That was our start date of like, all right, like, let's do this from then till May 10th. And my first show was the Francois Classic in 2014, where we entered novice middleweight, and I weighed in at 76.0 pounds on the dot. And that show, I won novice, won middleweight, and won the overall in my very first competition, which was a crazy experience because during that competition, I'm not sure if anyone ever watched it or if there's a video, but like it was something weird happened. So like when we came out, I was in first call out, and then before any posing happened, they pushed me off the stage, and like everyone was confused. Like I was kind of like, what did I just do? It's my first show. I'm like, did I just kind of just get disqualified? And I ended up winning. And I was kind of like, what happened? And they were like, before you flexed, we already knew you won, but like we couldn't keep you on the stage because you were too distracted. So they were like, let's just get you off so we can actually place second through fifth. So it was kind of like weird hearing that for the first time, that everyone's like, I've never seen that before, but like, cause I thought I just blew it. I'm like, I got on there. I'm like, well, damn, I just lost the whole show and I don't even know what happened, but.
Wow. Now, you mentioned Justin, hiring him as a coach. Is that Justin Compton then?
Yeah.
Okay.
Justin
So
Compton,
you've been working with him basically since day one then, huh?
Yeah. He's the only coach I've ever had. Probably the only coach I will ever have. We work well together. He's pretty much like family to me. He's never dialed me in wrong. So like, as far as I'm concerned, there's really no reason that I would ever leave him at all.
So let's talk about Justin for a minute since we're there, and then we'll take a step back into your story. So back in 2014, when you hired him, I mean, he was at the peak of his competing in competition days, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So what was that like for you, kind of going from not really knowing anything about bodybuilding and then having a top IFBB Pro coaching you? Was that kind of enlightening? Was that pretty cool? How did he kind of help you progress as a bodybuilder when you first hired him?
So he helped me a lot. But in general, like this question is like, even though like I knew he was good, I didn't really know, like when I got in the sport, still like it wasn't my choice. I was pushed, like I didn't really know how big he was. I just knew he looked good in here, but it's like I don't like. So when you ask the question, like, how was like working with such a big name, like in my head, I'm still clueless. And like how clueless I was to the sport makes funny because he laughs, but like a little side note, like I'm new to all this. So, like when we were training, he was like, all right, like I knew like water or salt. He was like, don't touch that. So like I don't really drink water, but he never told me to add salt to my food. So like for like literally since January 1st to May 10th, I never salted anything. I had a salt-free diet for like 4 months. There was times that I would get very lightheaded. My blood pressure was very low. I remember like my doctors being like, man, like your blood pressure is low. Like, do you feel like you're going to pass out? I'm like, yeah, I did kind of like, that's kind of how I feel. But like 1 week out, he sends me like an email. He's like, all right, like we're looking fantastic. Do not touch your salt or water. Keep it exactly where it's at. And I'm like, all right, what does that mean though? I'm like, you don't touch my salt. I'm like, I've never added salt. And he was like, what? It was like, dude, he's like, what do you mean? I'm like, you never told me to add salt. He was like, I thought like this is just like a basic thing of like people just know it. Like, so when you ask these kind of questions, keep in mind, like when I was entering, like that's how clueless I am. Like he was just like, man, like I had no clue. He's like, this is just common sense. And you're over here like literally not drinking much water because I just didn't like water. And, once he found that out, he's like, you need to like, actually, he forced me to, but like salt. Yeah. I literally, whatever salt was literally in the meat itself. And I buy salt free like that, like organic stuff. That's all the salt that my body was getting. So kind of got off track there. It's like, what was the original question?
No, you're good. You're good. But what did Justin, when you first got into bodybuilding, when you first hired him, what did he kind of help you in terms of maturing as a bodybuilder? And then how has he kind of helped you progress over the last couple of years?
So him, like pretty much I've learned everything from him. And we got along. So like I respect him a lot. So he helped me grow as a person because at first I'm a very like heavily like question person. I ask a lot of questions because I care. And I'm not like a natural born leader. I'm more like a natural born learner. I don't like to give orders. I like to just sit back and take in knowledge, like take notes. That's how I was in college. Never to sit back, like when class is over, I write down all these questions, go to the teacher's thing, ask them there. Like I never asked questions in person. It was always there. So like he helped me acquire all the knowledge that I have. And obviously like training's a little different. So like I tried a lot of stuff, and then like over time I figured out what I liked, and it's not necessarily what he does. I like to do a lot of like light lifting and just reps and squeezes for a long period of time. He doesn't really like, he's like, I don't really believe in working out for 3 hours. But after our first win and everything, he was like, clearly whatever you're doing is working. Your body's responding. You're absolutely diced. He's like, so going forward, he's like, from all the knowledge that I gained from him and all that, and just kind of taking what I want, is like, you can control your own training. And then, but just everything else, like in a way too, like since I don't have a great relationship with my father, I know like he's only 6 months older than me, but like still in a way, like I look up to him as like a father figure. So he's helped me become more of a man in the sport, because like I was so naive. I was scared. I'm very stage fright. Like I don't like being in public. So like me being a bodybuilder doesn't really make sense, because I don't want to be in crowds. I don't want attention. I want to wear hoodies when I go to the gym. I don't want a camera in my face. But he's kind of like, look, man, if you want to get paid, you want sponsors, you want this, like, so he has helped me kind of become a man in the sport. And even though I'm still like, like nervous at times, like on stage, I was kind of stumbling here and there because my nerves were getting the best of me. Still like I've come a long way in accepting and just kind of getting, more comfortable with doing all this stuff. So Justin has been a huge part of me becoming the athlete that I am, and me just becoming a person in general. So I look up to him not only as a coach, but also as a father, almost in a way.
Excellent. So I want to talk a little bit about what happened to you when you go from 104 pounds and you start putting on, 15 pounds here, 20 pounds here, and then you get up to, 175, 180, 185 before you start competing. I mean, what does that do to an individual in terms of just your confidence and how you carry yourself? Obviously, you're getting attention. Like, how did that transform you or help you kind of like move forward as a human being, as an adult?
I'd say like this is a hard question to kind of answer, because if you get to know me, I really don't believe in myself. So like the more progress I got, it was almost like like an inverse effect. Like it was like the more pressure on myself that I had. Like I knew I had talent, but I had to keep going. So the more I got, it just kind of kept getting to a point of like how can I explain this? Like I knew I could be a great athlete, but we all want to be like the number one. So the more I started to transform, the more attention I got, the more here. But in my mind, so like all this external stimulus is like, dude, like you have great genetics. And then like as I started to become more of a bodybuilder and age there and like come to Columbus, like everyone's like, bro, like I think you could do the 212 champ. Like, like, and then so you start thinking, so like it was nice getting all this attention. Everywhere I go, I get stopped. Everyone's like, bro, like your shape, your genetics, you're here. Like, people who watch me grow in the gym are like, I've never even seen this before. And even like these transformations, like, yes, like these transformations, like I went from 150 to 230, and everyone's like, this is a 3-year. Okay, is it like it's truthful? But like if you've watched me over the years, like everyone knows I went pro in 2014. So everyone's like, well, you didn't go from a child to a man in 3 years. Like I physically did, but yes, there was muscle memory there. But like I went pro in 2014. I'm not like, you should all know this if you're like in the sport, but everyone's like, but like I've been 150 pounds and 200 pounds like 6 times. And between like the 6 and 7 surgeries I've had, like Lily, I'm like 200, 150, 200, 150, 200, 150. So like, yes, I've had this. The first time I ever hit 200 pounds was when I was 20 years old. But like, let's say in 2019, when I lost it all, like that is me in 2019. I lost all muscle, all weight. It came back, but yeah, that is an official 2-year transformation. So all this attention is good. Like it makes me believe myself, but like, I don't want to be 2 or 3 in the world. I want to be number 1. So then it starts making me think like I have very, very good genetics and very unique, but it's like, am I like, so I start thinking to myself, like, do I have enough to actually be the best on the planet? Or am I just a great bodybuilder? So then in my mind, I'm like, okay, like I have to push even harder. So then like, in a way, like I don't really believe in myself or I don't listen to the compliments because because I'm not number one yet. So then it makes me kind of like push harder. So it's kind of like, it's a fine line between like being like, I stay hungry, but also kind of like losing your head of like, so it's not like deep down, I truly believe in myself that I can be one of the best in the world. And people can see that, but like the 10 layers above it are like, it's just like, I don't truly believe myself. Like, oh man, like, thank you for the compliment, but like, I'm not that good. I'm not on the Olympia stage yet. I'm not top 5 in the world. And to me, I'm like, that's all that matters. Like, I'm not doing this to look good. I'm not doing this to just be an athlete. Like, I'm doing this because I want to be the best. And if I'm not going to be the best, then I can't accept these compliments yet because I have something to prove. So it's like, the more compliments I get, it kind of makes me put myself down because I'm like, stop listening to it. Because the more you listen to it, the more you're going to like it, and the more you're going to believe you're great. But to me, the minute you believe you're great, that hunger is gone. Like, you can't push. Like, to me, I'm like, stop. Like, you don't look this good. You don't have that good genetics. Go in that gym and fucking do 5 more sets because you know why? Like, because I need to be number one. And so that's kind of like, it's that weird. I'm not sure if you could understand that, but like, I do believe myself at the very core. That on top of it, like, it kind of keeps me humble of like, the more compliments I get, I'm like, stop, like, put your headphones on, don't listen. You're not the best yet. So you got to keep going forward.
That might not make sense to a lot of people, but it definitely makes sense to me. I get where you're coming from, and I appreciate you sharing that, Brian. Now, so your first competition in terms of bodybuilding was 2014. You won the entire show. I mean, you were so outstanding that they basically didn't even judge you. They just said, hey, step off. Now, after you won that competition, what was next? Because we know that you turned pro later that year. So talk about what was your next competition after your first show in 2014?
So that was the 2014 NPC USA Championships in Las Vegas, July 25th and 26th, if I believe correct. And the original plan that Justin had was to take a year off, gain mass, and do the 2015 North Americans and go pro as a light heavy. But he got so many phone calls that night from other people in the industry that was like, hey, like, let this kid go pro now. Yes, he's only a middleweight, but he got phone calls from other coaches that were pretty big names and were like, dude, like, this kid's a pro now. Let him try for his card. And you still have time for North Americans in August of 2015. So like, he asked me, so he gave me a call that Sunday after the show. He's like, hey man, he's like, so do you want to stick to the original game plan or do you want to try to go pro now? And in my head, I'm like, well, what do you think? And he's like, well, it's obviously travel, it's more money, more this, more that. It's your call. I'm like, well, where's the show at? He's like, Las Vegas. I'm like, well, like, I wouldn't mind going to Vegas. So that's what ultimately made me choose the show. Then we went there and same thing happened. I'm not sure if we can pull up the video, but like, it's what's funny is so when we first went to the show and we do what's called like the quarter turns. You first come out, do the quarter turns, then do mandatories, then do your routine, and then do the lineup. When we did quarter turns, I did all my quarter turns in the wrong direction. And the reason for that is I was the first one to register because Justin was always like, be the first ones to get in, get out, so we can start carbon up. So I actually was there. I was like there like 2 hours early. So I was like the first at the door. If you first want to register, you are the first one in line. I'm left-handed. I'm not right-handed. And keep in mind, I'm this nervous kid. I don't like crowds. So there's no one in front of me. When they said turn, I just turn left. I don't turn right. So I thought I got disqualified by like, and then when I realized I was facing all the other competitors on this massive championship stage, I'm like, shit. I'm like, I just fucked up. I can't like, and then so like, I was like, I got off stage and texted Justin. I'm like, I just blew it. Like, I just kind of like, I mean, there's no chance for me to win. But apparently same thing happened. Like I looked so good because even after like the post-show interview with Dennis James and Flex Wheeler, they were like, dude, like they like, I saw it say, he's like, there was no one even close. He dominated the middleweight. And so, that's kind of what I thought. And like, obviously like my biggest, not to get too off track, but like my biggest weakness is my posing. I don't I'm not the best poser, but in my mind at the time, like if I could just make my body downright like perfect, what does posing matter? Like I know how to execute the pose. It may not be beautiful getting to it, but I know how to just hold that final pose. And that's kind of my thought. So, which worked out. It didn't matter how my posing was. All that mattered was I looked so better than everyone else that I just won without even having to flex. Wow. So probably not the best way to do it in the pro league, but it worked to get me to the pro league.
Yeah. No, that's unbelievable. Now, immediately after the USA's, you've literally competed in 2 competitions and you're an IFBB Pro. So, and you just said that Justin basically has taught you everything in terms of bodybuilding. At that point, you probably still didn't know a whole lot. I mean, you just said that you were doing your quarter turns incorrectly. So you were so green. Now, as soon as you turned pro, I mean, social media back in 2014 was completely different than it is today. I mean, Instagram, was Instagram even a thing in 2014? I don't think it was even out yet, was it?
I think it came out like 2012. Like it was just like, it wasn't huge,
okay,
but it was just like there. Cause I did have one when I got with Justin, because like he had to please send your handle so he can look at you. And mine at the time, like I'm full Italian. I'm from Northeast Cleveland, right by Little Italy. I looked like a Guido. I just had hair, and I'm like, there's no way he's gonna say yes to this, because I remember thinking that. So it was around when I got with Justin.
Okay, so social media overall at that time was completely different than it is today, but there was still, I'm sure, a lot of praise. There was a lot of accolades. I mean, immediately after you turned to IFBB Pro, how did you handle that? Because you continue to say, like, you're kind of like, kind of a scared person. You're maybe a nervous person. You don't like attention. You don't like crowds. And there had to be quite a bit of attention right after you turned pro. How did you handle that at that time?
So I kind of lost my mind a little bit. I remember Davies pulling me to the side. So, I mean, this is how kind of mentally screwed up I was. I remember being 2 weeks out from the Francois when Justin switched my breakfast from oatmeal to cream of rice. And I was like, why? I mean, looking great. And obviously the reasons of cream of rice cause less inflammation. It's better. But I don't know this, but I've never cooked it. I've never ate it. I know I had to eat my meals in specific windows. If I had to eat breakfast at 7 o'clock, I gave myself a plus 5 minutes. So from 6:55 to 7:05, I had to get the meal in, because you can't take too long to eat. I was like, no, it's just he needs me at this time. So that's kind of restrictions I put on myself. And I knew how to cook my oatmeal immediately. So I was go do my fast cardio, come home, put it in a minute, 15 seconds, wait 30 seconds. It's creamy, down it. And cream of rice was taking 5 minutes to cook. And all of a sudden it went outside of the window. I started to panic. I'm like, this isn't cooking. I don't know what's going on. So I just drank it, because I'm like, well, now I'm screwing up the rest of my day. My calories are too close together. And many people are probably watching this and you'd be like, wow, this kid's screwed up. I was that obsessed with timing. And I just drank raw cream of rice. And then I started to do the research, eating raw rice, your body can't digest it. You're just gonna flush it out. Now I lost nutrition. I'm 2 weeks out. I just pretty much just skipped the whole meal because of my mistake. And I went to the gym, and I was in this legit panic attack for a day. Davies grabs me. He's like, bro, he's like, you need to calm down. He's like, being type A is what is needed to be a champion. But he's like, you're at the level, he's like, bro, he's like, you're literally going insane. And he's like, you're busting that fine line, pretty hard. So that's kind of how I was, just kind of loose. So once I went pro, now keep in mind, in context, this is my very first attempt at doing anything. So I just broke a record on my very first try of having the shortest career ever, but that's me just driving the speed limit. So my speed limit is going 300 miles an hour, while everyone else is this kid, so I didn't understand what I did. I just went on stage, won my thing, and I was just doing me. But in that instance, I just did something that no one has ever done before. So once all this started to hit me, that like I was expected. I remember afterwards, like this kid's gonna be great in 212. Obviously he's too small. He needs more mass, but like all the expectations of me now trying to keep driving 300 miles an hour. So now I started going to the gym for 3.5 hours, 4 hours. I had to lift more and more and more and more. And I kept putting so much strain on my body. I wasn't sleeping because I was having all these panic attacks. My shoulder ended up just completely falling apart because I've already had like the surgeries before, but I kept working out for so much and not letting my body heal so much that the shoulder just started getting tremendously pain. And then I had to get shoulder surgery again, which then at that point, that's when everything stopped. The 6-year hiatus happened. And obviously at this point, you can imagine the amount of depression doing what I just did, becoming like in the spotlight, and then now just losing everything. And then at this point, I just like, I started to come back here and there, but like we can get into like all the other surgeries too. Things just kept piling on. And like, dude, I was just, I lost hope because it was just like, I was never going to happen. And so it was extremely difficult, not physically, but also mentally what happened. So I just blew my mind. I didn't know how to handle anything. And I let everything kind of just crumble me. But over the course of all these surgeries and everything and just kind of getting older, like I'm still like a little nervous here, but like I've come a very long way to who I was in 2014 that I am right now.
So I want to, so for all of you who are watching this and listening to this, Brian just did an awesome interview with Ron over at Muscular Development, and they really get into the details of all of his surgeries and setbacks in the 6-year hiatus before he came back and competed at his pro debut in Indy in 2021. So I want to encourage all of you to go over to the Ron Line Report, musculardevelopment.com, the YouTube channel, Muscular Development, and listen to Brian's interview over there with Ron. Here today, I want you just to lightly touch on some of the setbacks that you had in that 6 years. But what I really want you to talk about, Brian, if you don't mind, is what you just kind of brought up, the struggle mentally, the depression, and just what you had to kind of go through mentally to finally step on an IFBB stage in 2021. So just lightly touch on some of the setbacks and surgeries, but I want you to focus more on the mind and how you had to battle your mind to really become who you are today. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so focus more on the mental, not physical.
Please.
So yeah, so the first shoulder surgery was beginning of like 2015, because that was like around that time was I started feeling a bunch of pain. That was when I had to get the shoulder surgery immediately after being like the it boy and winning in fashion. So obviously going from a high and setting a record to just coming like now I need a 10-month recovery process. And if you know my genetics, like my coach says, like if I skip like 2 meals, I lose 10 pounds. If I skip a couple workouts, I lose 10 pounds. Like my body, which is all these transformations that happen. Like, oh my God, how do you go from a child to a man? It's because if I don't eat food or lift, I will literally lose 60 pounds in 2 weeks. My body will eat itself alive. Like, I am not meant to be this size. Like my body will devour itself completely. And that just like my metabolism. So like when seeing this and just watching my body literally what took so long to build, and then I go back to looking like I'm 15 years old. I mean, like we want the look. All bodybuilders can understand that. Like I want them like, and to look in the mirror that I am now a middle school boy. That's hard. Like that is, I mean, mentally traumatic. And then to try to accept that, man, like I'm in this, like I can't do anything. And then also was hard. Keep in mind, so this all happened when I originally moved to Columbus in 2011. That was originally with the boat surgery or the boat accident from when we talked about in muscular development, which really popped my shoulder out and I had to start the process. That was my first surgery. So I got hired by Chase, moved to Columbus, and then Amelia had to get surgery. So like the first year I'm in the city, I was not allowed to even like make friends. I was in a like had to get hired. Then after like the first month or so, I can get insurance. At that point, had to take a short-term disability, get my shoulder fixed, and be stuck in my apartment in this new city, no family, no anything. Just I'm stuck in a box, an empty box by myself with my shoulder. So then got into training, got into lifting. Then 2015 had to go through that again. I'm like, man, like I already know what that was like. And now I'm doing this again. It's not easy. And everyone like always says like, oh, like it's easier the second time. Like, oh, you've already been through it. That is a lie. It's worse and worse each time because you already know what it felt like then, and now it's going to be worse. It's almost like if you were fat, like if you're like, you know, you go keto, you lose 100 pounds, then you start eating carbs again, and now you're 150 pounds more. Like it's worse. You like you don't want to be fat again. So watching your body do that. So then all of a sudden that all gets situated, and I finally get back, and my left hand is getting numb. And I'm like, man, why is my hand just numb? I'm thinking the heart attack, but it's not. He's like, I go to the doctor. He's like, no, like your nerve is dead. He's like, so because it was just there. And so after that, like now I have to get all my nerve surgery on my dominant hand. And I got to sit in this apartment and use my other hand, still have like no friends, no anything. I'm just kind of like there. And once again, my comeback is stopped. Then I'm trying to come back again, and my biceps hurting like, you know, absolute hell. So then, you know, I go get an MRI, and they're like, your bicep tendon's about to pop off. And so like here, like, I'm not sure if you can see, like, it's like got that little pocket right there. So like my biceps there. So it's like, at this point, it's like, what, like 5 years, or no, it's like 4 years into it. I still haven't made a comeback. And like everyone just like, I kind of started losing hope in myself. I'm like, all right, like, why is all this happening? I don't understand it. Like, I don't deserve this. Like, you know, all I want to do is go to a gym, and I just couldn't do it. And mentally, once again, like not being in a city with all your friends and family, they're all 2.5 hours away. And then like, you know, I don't really travel because of like all the food, everything. It just makes my life even worse. And me being so high strung, like I'm just at this point clinically depressed because I'm still looking at myself as a child. I can't go to the gym. I've had 4 surgeries. I don't know. And like, I have no idea why my hand went numb or how it got crushed. It still baffles me to this day. And so then the shoulder, the nerve, the bicep / shoulder again, to get an extra anchor in there with the labrum, because the front part of the labrum was the reason like where it all connects, was how the bicep kind of got frayed a bit. So then this enters the most depressing part of my life, the pilonidal cyst. And, you know, I'm going to be honest here. So like the mental part, like this pretty much broke me entirely. So I have this, you know, massive wound / abscess in the middle of my butt crack on my tailbone that wouldn't go away. I'm not like, you know, you're not supposed to sweat, not supposed to hear, but it's like, I'm sweating right now, just normally. I'm very built. Like my glutes, obviously, if people know me as an athlete, my glutes are extremely developed. So it just couldn't breathe. And I remember like my roommate at the time was like, dude, like I would not wish this upon anyone. Like this was like 26 months. And, you know, I don't want to get like too much into it. Are you still recording?
Yeah.
I got another phone call, so I'm not sure if it got messed up, but it messed up.
I can't see you. So.
All right. Let me,
it'll just let the call probably end, and then it'll come back on.
Oh yeah. Sorry about that.
That's okay. Just keep talking, Brian.
Yeah. So at this point, like I got the first surgery to cut the wound out, and it wouldn't close. They just kind of like gauzed it. And 6 months later, like they said, 4 to 6 weeks. And the general surgeon was like, yeah, it's not really closing. So I had to go see the plastic surgeon. And around the 3rd time, like I started to give up on myself. Like, I'm not gonna lie, like I very much wanted to die because no one could explain this. No one could, like, this isn't like I injured myself. Like, I was like, why? Like, this is like an act of God in a way. Like, why is this happening? Why do I have a hole in my ass? Like, why won't it close? Like, what the hell is going on? And I remember, but like, you know, like, I remember like at times, like this can get kind of deep. I remember like my roommate's name was Omi, and I would just cry, man. I'd be screaming at night, like times, like I had to scream, and I'd come out and I'm like, dude, like, and he keep me there. And I'm like, why the fuck is this happening? Like, this is really like, I would beg him. I'm like, I want someone to kill me. I want to do it myself. I was like, my life has been ruined for 6 years. I have no idea what's going on. This isn't the life that I choose to live. Like, and if this is how it's going to be the rest of my life, then kill me now. Like, just do it so I can be in peace. because this is not what I want. And I remember like, I'm crying a little bit right now because I remember how hard it was. No one can understand what the hell I went through with that fucking ass situation. I lost myself. Like, I never really gave up on myself internally. Obviously, I'm still here. But we have no clue how much I wanted to die because my whole life was just taken from me. And it was like, in my head, it was almost like winning, like going pro was like a curse. Like, it was like the minute I did something that meant to me, is like my life, like from that moment, just went straight downhill. And I just like, it was like, I wish I would have never went pro because in a way, because I was like, why is all this shit happening to me? Like, why? And I couldn't explain it. And I remember like, it was so hard keeping myself together and getting through that moment. And honestly, without my roommate Omi at that time to kind of help me just sit there, and he didn't even talk back half the time. He just sat there and just let me express all that anger that I was having at life itself, and like with no reasoning behind it. And somehow I got through it. And then the minute it ended, like now everything started to click. But like for that 6-7 year period, like nothing could explain anything. Like I wasn't even much in the gym. So why were all these surgeries happening? The first one can make sense. I got too, like, I just got like, everything got too much for me. And I started to work out too much and I fucked my shoulder up. But like outside of that, like everything else, like the second, like the bicep thing, it was like, I wasn't even in the gym long enough to even like do damage. And then the nerve thing and then the butt thing doesn't make any sense at all. No one can make sense of it. And it's like in a way, I just felt like, I don't know, like it was like I went pro and then like I like all this bad luck. It was like I just started to happen to me. And it was like, is it all because of like, I don't know. Like it was like it just made sense of like this was like I should have never done this because this caused all this bad shit to happen. And like I felt like it was just like almost like the like in baseball, like kind of like the Cubs curse or whatever. Like me turning pro at the fastest ever was just an absolute curse because like everyone else that went pro in like 7 to 8 years and I went pro in 2 months. Like this is maybe like this happening to me because it happened too fast. Like you have to slow down. So now you, since you had the highest high that anyone could ask for, you're about to get the lowest lows to offset, well, you know, like to make it even to everyone else. Like that's how my mind thought that like this wasn't fair that everyone else had turned pro. So now I got to go through 6 years of hell as a way to even things out. Like it sounds crazy, but like I was completely losing myself during that butt situation. And it's hard, but like, yeah, I truly gave up on myself, but I was never weak enough to like obviously hurt myself. But I would just wake up crying one night, just begging, like something happened. Like, I don't know, like an airplane come in, I think just our place burn up and fire, just do it so I don't have to deal with this anymore. So sorry that got too real, but
go ahead and blow your nose there, my man.
that was a very traumatic part of my life. But after getting through it, you know, stop asking questions of like, why is it happening to me? And once I got healed and like looking back, it helped me grow as a person afterwards. Cause it was like, you know, like stop asking these questions. You're never going to find them. And the more you ask why it happens, it's just going to tear you apart. But go forward and be like, you know what? Like I am who I am right now because of all that. And so in no way, shape or form would I say that like, you know, I go through it again, but you know, it's helped me let go of all of the, like keep myself caged and grow as a person and to not be so anal about everything. So it has helped me tremendously grow, but man, that was an absolute awful part of my life. And I never, you know, asked for anyone or like, you know, like upon like my worst enemy, I wouldn't even ever have that happen to them.
Yeah, man. I was traveling over this past weekend, and I listened to your interview with Ron, and I mean it was probably a good hour and a half. And when you were talking about all the surgeries and getting in the details, I was just like, I, nobody can understand what you went through, dude. Because it just, I was like, I mean, even Ron was kind of blown away, right? He's just like, one person, all of this happened to. It's unbelievable. But whether you believe this or not, I do believe everything happens for a reason, and your story is just going to be that much sweeter, man, when you eventually are a 212 IFBB Olympia champion. Now, I want you, Bryan, to talk about the official comeback, 2021 Indy Pro. I mean, just the emotions and just the relief to be able to step on a bodybuilding stage again. Can you paint that picture for us? Can you talk about that? And then we'll talk about 2022 Indy Pro.
Yeah, the emotions were very big because, like, once again, like, this was 7 years in the making. Still, like, I just thinking, like, to myself, like, what's gonna happen? I'm not making it to the stage. Like, something's gonna happen, and being able to sit there and finally get in, like, within 1 week, and it's finally becoming real. I remember, like, I kind of screwed up, like, my peak week because, like, of just, I had to do things my way sometimes. So, like, I remember, like, I told Justin afterwards, like, I stopped drinking water a lot sooner than what he thought, because back then at the 2014 Francois, like, I didn't drink water or salt really. I wasn't know what I was doing. So, like, all I knew was like, I had that, like, this moment was 7 years in the making, and I had to do what I needed to do at this moment because, like, it's been there for so long. So I kind of, like, screwed up a little bit. I didn't listen to him entirely because I had to make myself happy. And so, like, we could have came in a little better, but we came in a little flat because of what I did. But I just wanted to be absolutely peeled. And from back then, not eating salt and not drinking water, it worked. So the emotion of hitting that stage and finally having everything end was, to me, tremendous. And, obviously I was still, like, a little disappointed in myself for coming in fourth, because obviously it was, it's like, I haven't lost a show yet, even though it's my third show, but, like, hey, like, but, like, in general, like I kept telling myself, like, okay, like, you place fourth at a pro show in your third show of your whole career, like top 5 at a pro level show, like, you need to be happy. So, like, so that was, like, a learning experience for me. Like, okay, like, I didn't win, but, like, dude, we're the best of the best. And then that kind of helped catalyst, like, 2022 of, like, all right, like, that 2021 was about coming from a hospital bed to making a body. There's only so much we could do. And that's, like, what Justin said. He's like, dude, give your body a year with your genetics. And you came from a hospital bed to getting as much weight as we could. And it wasn't true dense muscle. We did get a little too fluffy last year. Diet did also get a little too relaxed. I was eating fast food a lot, like, just trying to get some calories in. So this year, coming from a lean 197 to, like, all right, like, let's build and get that maturity, like, is exactly what we thought to do for 2022, which was, like, come in and just blow it out the water. And so I kind of knew 2021 wasn't going to be as good as what I wanted, mainly because it just wasn't enough time. Like, we literally, like, from coming back from a hospital bed to that show was, like, a year and a half. And he's like, dude, he's like, think about that. It's like a year and a half. You went from a hospital bed for 2 years and 2 months to a fourth place pro, like, show. He's like a 212 pro show. He's like, that's incredible. You coming from, like, a child to being able to build a body that fast and actually place top 5. And then he's like, dude, do 1 more year with your genetics, he's like, and that was it. Like, and then so 2022 was exactly how the Francois and USA's came out. We just came out, we blew it out the water. And so, so that was kind of a learning curve. Like, look, like, we need time. And that's kind of like here, like, you can't just, even though I built the body stupid fast for the 2021, still, it's a prime example of no matter how good genetics you have, this is like, you need tremendously more time. And then, like, even next year, like, how much can I build on top of that? Like, can I come in harder and here? So it's like that maturity. And what people say, like, I'm in the prime, I'm 33. That's, like, the prime time of of bodybuilding that your body's going to mature and get dense and hard. So yeah, so the amount of emotion in 2021 was incredible, but at the same time, there was a little bit of a learning curve and a letdown because I'm just like, I'm not used to losing it. I've never lost. And then to use that to come back into 2022 and just use that to fuel me and blow it out the water like how I did was truly, I mean, far more emotional than you even think than last year, because now it took 7 years to break the curse, but now my dream came true. And it was so much emotion after, like, I mean, just here, like, just crying on this. Like, I went back and cried this story because, like, everything I went through, and I just, I stayed the course. I'm not sure how. I don't know how it happened, but like now everything came true. Like now I wasn't just some bodybuilder. Like now I'm at the greatest stage there is. And the amount of emotion this year was tremendously more than last year, because now everything meant something. Everything that I went through, everything that I gave up, everything that I sacrificed now wasn't just a hobby. Now this all means something. For the 33 years of my life, I finally made this happen. I didn't just do it for shits and giggles. Now it's like I'm a true competitor to being what I've always wanted to be. So one hell of a wild ride, man.
And you're a 2022 Olympian. So why don't you talk about the game plan for you and Justin as you guys prep for your first appearance at the 212 Mr. Olympia later this year?
So the prep for right now, so 2 weeks, which we're now like 2 weeks after the show, I plan to move to Cleveland, which I'm here right now. So I kind of asked for like 1 month of like, we've been kind of going hard since then, like what, 2.5 years since November of 2019. That was when like we got back together. From that moment on, it's kind of going like, not that I'm burnt out, but like I put a lot of work in. And I'm like, man, like we won here. Like I need the Olympia is in 7 months. Kind of have 1 month. Like I'm moving. I want to not be on a diet. I just kind of like, I've softened up a bit, but like for now, it's like I'm in that, month phase of like, I just want to kind of be with my friends. I want to get back home, get settled in, which I'm doing right now. But like, and so once I'm set here, then we'll get back to work. So the game plan was just to give me that 1 month post show of just kind of allowing myself to just go out, be with my friends, be with my family now that I'm back home in Cleveland, and just kind of enjoy that. And then once everything's back in order, that's it. Like get back to the gym, get back to the strict, not a strict diet, but get structure back in my life, which will be probably in like the end of the week. And then at that point, it's just the same thing. It's like, all right, like stop cheating first off. And then my training, he's like, dude, like there's no like, just it's just who I am. It's like, I'm not worried. Once my brain clicks, that's it. So it's just, let's try to get as much rebound and extra muscle as we can. If we can maybe come in 2 pounds heavier at the Olympia. But he's like, the game plan is still the same. He's like, just, in this 1 month of kind of time off and getting like your head kind of balanced out after all that 2.5 years of hard work. He's like, all he asks is like, just eat food. He's like, I don't want you to lose weight. I don't care if you get too fat. He's like, with your genetics, how like you skip one meal, you lose muscle. He's like, I just don't want you to lose muscle. So he's like, so just, if anything, just overeat. Eat as much food as you can. I do not want you losing weight. Then once you get back to work, there's no doubt in my mind that you'll crush it. And then when it comes again to about 12 weeks out, like so like how he does it is 12 weeks out is when we start. And from 12 weeks to 10 weeks, we make the clean diet. So whatever I'm doing bad, like some honey, or instead of eating potatoes, pasta, like those off-season carbs, for 2 weeks, he'll clean it up. And then 10 weeks out. So I only do a 10-week diet. And then from 10 weeks out, that's truly when prep starts. Let's go. But from 12 to 10, it's change the carb sources, change the fat sources, get off of the more relaxed versions, get rid of the honey, get rid of the peanut butter, get rid of the pasta. Now it's just chicken, 96 beef, rice, and potatoes. That's it. And then 10 weeks of just, I'm his slave and I'll get the job done.
Absolutely. So what's your, in your mind, what is your goal for the Olympia this year in terms of placing?
So, like, I'm not trying to put a lot of pressure on myself. I'm learning that, but the goal, like, to me, my win, if I could crack top 5, like, top 10 is great. Hey, I'm top 10 in the world, but like, if I hit top 5, that to me would be like, I just won the championship. Like, that would be tremendous if I could do that. So that's the end goal. 5th place, I'm more than happy with what I've done. But even if I place top 10, still, like, I'm top 10 in the world, but that top 5 to kind of get one of those 5th place medals, dude, I would be absolutely happy that, like, I just did that.
Very cool. And then your ultimate bodybuilding goal is to win the Mr. Olympia as a 212. Is that correct?
Yeah, I want to be able to say it once that I was the best 200-pound bodybuilder on this damn planet. Yeah. That is the ultimate goal. I want to be able to sit there and be like, I did it. In 1 year, this year, no one was better than me.
Amen, man. Okay, Brian, we're going to start wrapping it up here. I want you, I know we all have struggles in life. Obviously, we all have issues. We all are going through different things at different seasons of life. If somebody's watching this, if somebody's listening to this and they're just really resonating with your story because maybe they're going through something or, they have a loved one that's going through something. What are maybe just some words of encouragement? What are some words maybe from your own life experiences that you could maybe just share or speak to anybody that's listening or watching this that's struggling or watching a friend or a loved one struggle right now?
The only thing that I would say that's huge is do not isolate yourself. I know I'm so used to it, but when you're going through something hard or you're kind of going through something what I did or just going through a hard time, put yourself around the people who love you. Utilize that. Do not push people out of your life. Do not just deal with it in your own mind. It is a terrible idea. Make sure that you have that support group and you have someone around, because honestly, without my roommate, I don't know if I would be here today. But that little bit of him just being there, listening to me and getting things off my chest was the last little bit of hope I needed to keep everything together. So do not keep yourself alone. Keep someone close in your life during those hard times. And I think that will ultimately keep everything together in the end.
Thank you for sharing that, Brian. Okay. The last question that I have for you, and then I'm going to kind of give you the final words before I do the outro here. What do you feel like bodybuilding has given you, Brian? Or what do you feel like bodybuilding has taught you?
Like bodybuilding has given me just like my personality, like without lifting itself, like my whole life, it's kind of like, like being that small kid, like I was a ghost, like no one wanted to be my friend. No one wanted to be anything. Like bodybuilding itself gave me everything I have. Like it's kind of weird. Like even like my real friends, like my main group of friends, like they don't lift, they don't do anything. And I love them to death. I die for all of them, but like they only found me because like we were in math class and I was just this big Italian kid, and we're all Italian, but like without me having that body, they would have like never noticed me. And it's not like they were my friends just because I lift, because they don't care about lifting whatsoever. But bodybuilding pretty much gave me almost everything in my life. It gave me an identity. It gave me a personality. It gave me the friends that I have. It gave me even going to like Columbus, all the opportunities that I have just from lifting itself. So everything about who I am is from bodybuilding and creating the physique that I have. So I just say it's pretty much everything to me. Without it, I'd just be that ghost of a kid walking and not a single person even knowing who I am. So, and then what was the second part of that?
No, that's you answered it. And I just want, that for me, like I compete in bodybuilding myself and I call myself a bodybuilding junkie, but like, that's what I love hearing that in terms of, athletes like yourself, IFBB pros, top NPC athletes that I bring on, because, the thing is, Brian, is that bodybuilding for a lot of us has given us so much, and there's so many life lessons learned if you're open to them within bodybuilding. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, very much.
So bodybuilding is an absolutely beautiful thing. And there's so much more to it than just the physical. If you really tap into the true essence of bodybuilding, there's the mind, there's the spirit, there's the body, there's so many different levels to it. And it's pretty cool to hear that, to hear you say that bodybuilding's basically giving you everything. It's giving you that personality, that identity. I love it, man. Bryan, before I do the outro here, first of all, I just want to say thank you for coming on to Behind the Muscle podcast, sharing your story, man. It was really moving listening to you share your story with Ron, and I appreciate you coming on here and kind of getting into the details of your story. And then I just want to give you the platform here. Any shout outs, any final thoughts, any final words? The platform's yours, and then I'll do the outro, and that'll be a wrap.
Really, shout outs to have, like, want to give a shout out to Justin. You know, hey, like he's my coach. He's the master plan. Without him, I wouldn't have any of the success that I've had. I want to give a shout out to Jonathan Weiss, who's also been a firm believer in me since day one. He's helped me pose. His gym, he'll get equipment that, like, in his gym that I want. Like, he puts there, is like, hey man, he's like, just, you know, he's just that kind of guy. I want to thank Mark Knight. He's a classic pro in Columbus. You know, it makes me sad that I'm leaving these people and I'm back in Cleveland now, but, like, you know, he's a big part of my success. Like, as early we talked about before, like, I kind of doubt myself a lot, you know, just how my mind works. Like, I try not to believe myself too much because of the hunger, but, like, sometimes it plays a fine line, and he's always there. He's like, bro, he's like, you know, like, you truly are an amazing athlete and you need to believe that, you know. So he does help keep me mentally, you know, all there when I'm starting to be like, you know, get a little too much doubt in myself. So those three people, to me, I always got to give them a shout out because they mean so much to me, and they're a huge part of me having the success that I've had today. So that's why I, you know, want to give a shout out to you. But yeah, thank you for having me on the podcast. Thank you for allowing me to share my story. Hopefully, you know, it was better than expected, you know, but I'm trying to do it as real as possible. And, you know, I do apologize for getting a little emotional during that talk, because it's still a little soft spot in me.
Yeah, you don't have to apologize for being real, man. That's the power of the human story. That's why I do this podcast the way I do it, because there's so much more than the muscle. There's a story behind the muscle, right? So I love it. I appreciate it. What's your Instagram for anybody that wants to follow along or connect with you, Bryan, on Instagram?
So my Instagram is just my name. It's at Bryan Balzano, no space, no anything. And it's Bryan with a Y, not an I. So BRYAN BALZANO.
Perfect. And for those of you who want to connect with Bryan, go ahead, give him a follow, connect with him on Instagram. If you're on YouTube or iTunes, wherever you're listening to the podcast, watching it, Bryan's Instagram, along with Behind the Muscle podcast Instagram, is down in the show notes. So just scroll down and you can find both of our Instagrams there. For all of you who are tuning into this episode of Behind the Muscle podcast, I just want to say thank you so very much. If it wasn't for all of you, the podcast wouldn't exist. I appreciate all of you. I appreciate all of you who have subscribed to the podcast on whatever platform you're watching or listening. If you haven't subscribed on YouTube, I would ask that you would hit that subscribe button on YouTube. That's important because I release all of these Behind the Muscle podcast episodes first on YouTube, and then I'll distribute them to iTunes and the other podcast platforms. So if you aren't a subscriber on YouTube, make sure you go to YouTube. If you're on YouTube right now, please hit that subscribe button. I would greatly appreciate that. One final favor I would ask of all of you before we wrap up this conversation with Bryan, make sure you share this episode with Bryan on your Instagram stories, please. Make sure you tag Bryan, tag Behind the Muscle. That's a great way for other people to find the podcast, people to listen to the podcast, and people to be positively impacted through the bodybuilding stories that all of these great athletes are sharing on Behind the Muscle podcast. So please, if you found great value, which I know you did in Bryan's episode, share it on your Instagram stories. And then finally, I will leave you all with this. Remember, behind the muscle, there's always a story. We'll catch you guys later.